how to build a life. Today we're talking about character, and I think what happens a lot of times in our life is that we compare ourselves with other people, probably a little bit too much. And, Rick Warren always says that God makes us a masterpiece, and then we spend kind of the rest of our lives and the rest of our resources trying to become a carbon copy, of somebody else. And that's really true. With guys, a lot of times a guy will ask a guy, hey, so what do you do for a living? And so basically what we're asking them in a polite way is, how much money do you make? How much education do you have? And how successful are you? Because what I'm about to do is compare myself with you, and I'm also trying to figure out how valuable you are. And when I figure out how valuable you are, that's going to determine how I treat you. And I know I'm kind of digging into that a little bit, but really it's kind of true, when you think about it. I think women are the same way. Women compare themselves a lot when it comes to money or stuff or relationships or whatever it may be, just like anybody else. But, sometimes a woman may think, well, I've just got so many friends, I don't know who to do. I don't know who to go out with. There's just too many. They're all lining up to come and be with me. And my husband is incredibly hot. He's smoking hot. My kids are all popular. They really are. They're scholars. I got stickers all over my car. I can't even... It's just ridiculous. They're all athletic. They all start on every team they've ever been on. And we just don't understand failure in our home at all. And so basically, people try to compare themselves that way. When you compare yourself to somebody else, there's a couple of outcomes that could happen. And to be honest with you, they're really not good. Either of them are not good. One of them could potentially be that you could get caught up in pride. And the reason for that is you can always find somebody that's worse off than you. And if you find somebody that's worse off than you, the temptation is to sit back and say, well, look at them, and, well, look at me. I've got it all. Everything's going great, or whatever. And so there's kind of the temptation to kind of, at times, fall into pride. And the bad thing about pride is that pride always leads to destruction. It always does. If there's a way you can lead your wife or your husband or your kids or your family or anybody away from pride, that's a good thing. Because pride brings a fall. Pride brings destruction. Paul talked about this whole comparing thing a couple of times in 2 Corinthians chapter 10. If you want to pull your notes out of your programs, kind of take a look at it. If you have your Bibles, open up to 2 Corinthians. We'll be popping around to a few verses. 2 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 5, it basically says, we demolish arguments of every pretension. That word pretension sometimes is translated imaginations, like in the King James. It talks about imaginations versus the knowledge of God. The knowledge of God is always true. The knowledge of God is always dependable. But pretensions and imaginations sometimes aren't true at all. And when they're not true, boy, there's always a battle between what's true and what isn't true, especially in our minds. That's why the very next line, he says, you have to take captive every thought, and you have to make it obedient to Christ. And so what Paul says here is, please understand this. The standard is Jesus. The template is Jesus. The person you're supposed to compare yourself to is Jesus. And really nobody else. He's the only standard. He's the only template. And so that's why he says in the same chapter, just a few verses later, in verse 12, he says, we don't dare classify or compare ourselves with some who commend themselves, when they measure themselves by themselves, when they compare themselves with themselves. Basically, Paul says, that's just stupid. It's dumb. It's not wise. It doesn't make any sense that we would do that we would compare ourselves with all these other people all the time, because the danger is somehow, some way, you're going to get caught up in pride. The second thing that could happen is you could get discouraged. You could get discouraged. And the reason for that is because there's always somebody that's better looking. And maybe you're sitting there thinking, well, in my case, I don't think that's possible. You think, well, for sure in Gainesville, I've got everybody in Gainesville beat, for sure. I'm not sure about Haymarket, but, or whatever. I'm going to tell you this. You will always find somebody better looking. You will always find somebody that has more money. You will always find somebody that has more success. It's just the way it is. And what happens is you'll look at that and sometimes, wow, how come I don't have that success? I don't have that money. And you start to get discouraged. I remember when I was in college at Liberty, there was this one guy in our dorm, good-looking dude, right? And he was totally jacked and sculpted, and he would always walk around the dorm without a shirt on like, what's up, Barry? Hey, what's up, man? What's up? And I'd always be like going, I'm good, man. How you doing? You know, or whatever. I literally, one time I walked into the bathroom. This is kind of personal, but I walked into the bathroom, and I saw the guy in there just standing there looking at himself in the mirror like this. And then I walked by him, like just kind of like, and he goes, hey, Barry. I said, what? He goes, I don't think I could get any more tan than I am right now. And I just remember saying, yeah, it's probably true, man. Way to go. It's awesome. I don't know. Bottom line is you're always going to find somebody that just totally makes us look like idiots, you know? And it's really, really easy to get discouraged with stuff like that. Comparison's a waste of time because a lot of times the people that look like they have it all together, they look like they're completely fulfilled, they look like they have success, they look like they're happy, in all actuality, they're empty and hurting. And sometimes we kind of look at that and go, yes, they're empty and hurting. That's awesome. No, we don't say that. But we think it. No, we don't think it either. They're empty and hurting. I'm going to tell you, sometimes that happens. Why? Because it's easy for people to put on an act. It's easy for people to put on a show. That's exactly what was going on with the church at Sardis. The church at Sardis had a reputation for being alive. And Jesus said, you guys are dead. You are dead. You're as dead as a doornail. Bottom line. And I'm sure that people would have looked at their church and said, wow, Sardis is amazing. Sardis is spiritual. Sardis is really successful. They're doing amazing things. And they look at their church and think, wow, our church isn't doing anything. Our church is whatever. But all along, it was an act. All along, they weren't even alive. Jesus said, you guys have the reputation of being alive but are dead. It was like, when I think of the church at Sardis, I think of the movie Weekend at Bernie's. You ever seen the movie Weekend at Bernie's? Everybody's convinced Bernie's alive, but what is he? He's dead, right? They're just making him look like he's alive. Bernie's like going around like this and all this other stuff, but he's dead. Here's what Revelation 3:1 says. It says, write this letter to the angel of the church in Sardis. This is the message from the one who has the sevenfold Spirit of God and the 7 stars. I know all the things that you do and that you have a reputation for being alive, but really, you are dead. And that can be true in a lot of our relationships. It absolutely can. We can make everybody think our relationships are great, everything's just awesome, and it's alive, and it's wonderful, but really, they could be dying, and we could be putting on an act. And I know that there were times in our life, in my life, mine and Christine's life, when, you know, we've gone through some deep water in our marriage. We just have, I'll be honest with you. Might as well throw it out here, talk a little bit of therapy for me. We've gone through some deep waters, and there have been times when I honestly believed that it was more important the way we looked to the people around us than the actual problems that we were facing to be solved. And not only is that stupid, but that's dangerous. That is dangerous for a relationship, to only be something that's visible on the outside and on the inside be dying and falling apart. And I remember one time Christine, it was up in Mass, she came up to me and she said, you know what? When we have problems, the thing is, we never really solve them. It's like, yeah, we have the problem and things are bad, and then we kind of move past the problem and things are okay, but we never really solve the problem because they always creep back up again. It's almost like we just take it and sweep it under the rug. And that's why a lot of us have a lot of lumpy carpets at home. We got some lumpy carpets. We got lumpy carpets because we're taking our problems, sweeping them under the rug, not dealing with them, more concerned about the way everybody around us views us and views our lives. And the bottom line is, you know, we've got to make sure that we have the kind of relationship that we need to have. What in your life right now is dying? What in your life right now do you believe is absolutely dead? And what I would say to you is this, you know, you can't keep, maybe you sit there and you think, I can't keep acting anymore. I can't do it. It's too stressful. It's too taxing. I'm exhausted. I can't act another day. Making everybody believe that my life is this perfect life when my life is falling apart. That, oh yeah, my life is alive, but no, my life is dead and it's fallen apart. Maybe it's your marriage. Maybe it's your business. Maybe it's your family. Maybe it's your joy. And since God's in the business of turning crucifixions into resurrections, since God is in the business of taking something that's dead and breathing life back into it, here's what I believe. I believe there's hope. I believe there's hope. If you're sitting here today and you're discouraged about an area of your life that's fallen apart or dying, I'm going to tell you this. Don't underestimate the power of a holy and a righteous and powerful God to breathe life back into your marriage, life back into your family, life back into your kids. I honestly believe that with all my heart. He can do it. Maybe you're sitting there going, yeah, right. I'm going to tell you, he can do it. He's God, for goodness sake. So here's the question. How does God bring something in my life that's dead back to life? Two things. Number one, first of all, by forming your character. By forming your character. God is far more interested in your character than your comfort. We're very interested in our comfort. I want to be comfortable. I want to make sure that things just work out, that everything just works out in my life, right? And when it doesn't, I freak out and I go crazy and whatever. The truth of the matter is, God is far more interested. The problems and the discouragements that you have in your life is the God of the universe developing the character and the strength of who you are on the inside. Your character, the real you. Bottom line. And that's what he's going to do. That's what he's going to do in our lives. He's going to form that character in our lives. It's all the stuff that's on the outside. It's all the stuff that's visible that can give the wrong impression of who we really are. The question is, who are you on the inside? The question is, what is your character like right now, right here, today? All the stuff on the outside is going to fade away. But I'm going to tell you this, your character is going to last forever because you take your character with you to heaven. It's going to last forever. A life that's all about appearance is going to be really short on character. A hidden life is a shallow life. And you say, why are you talking so much about character? Because God can develop character in your life, which can in turn save your life. Save your relationships. Save your reputation. Save your career. I'm telling you, it's absolutely amazing. Look at Revelation 3:1 again. He says, write this letter to the angel of the church at Sardis. This is the message from the one who has the sevenfold Spirit of God. Now, in Revelation 1:4, it says that the seven spirits were before the throne. The sevenfold Spirit of God was before the throne. In Revelation chapter 3, in verse number 1, Jesus steps up, talks to John, and basically says this, I have the sevenfold Spirit. I possess the sevenfold Spirit. The sevenfold Spirit is the character of Jesus. And the character of Jesus is the essence of who he is. It's the real person. It's the person on the inside. Your character is the real you on the inside. And Jesus says, I have 7 characteristics in my life that are the real me. And he describes himself. How do you know it's 7 characteristics? Because he's referring to Isaiah chapter 11, verses 2 through 5. The sevenfold Spirit is described in Isaiah chapter 11. The first description is this. The first description is that he is the Spirit of the Lord. Capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D. The Lord, in all caps, refers to Jehovah God. In other words, literally, he is the eternal God. He is Jehovah God. He is self-existent. He's never had a beginning. He'll never have an ending. He is eternal. And that characteristic is unique to God because that's who he is. Jesus is God in the flesh. The second thing he talks about, the second characteristic in Isaiah 11, he says, I have the spirit of wisdom. And that wisdom speaks about experience and shrewdness. And it literally refers to a guy in the Bible by the name of Bezaleel. Any Bezaleels in the house? Anybody named Bezaleel? Middle name Bezaleel. Do you know anybody named Bezaleel? I don't either. So this guy's name is Bezaleel. And the Bible says that God literally fills him with the Spirit of God, the Spirit of wisdom, the Spirit of understanding, the Spirit of knowledge, the Spirit of workmanship. And it says that Bezaleel, interesting little side note about Bezaleel, Bezaleel's dad was Uri. Uri's dad was a guy by the name of Hur. Hur's an amazing guy because Hur was one of the guys that went up with Moses on the mountain and literally held up Moses' arm when they were fighting the Amalekites. They're fighting the Amalekites, and every time he takes the rod and he sticks it up, the children of Israel win. Every time the rod falls down low, the Amalekites start to win. So he starts getting tired. I can't hold this up over my head all day long. And so Aaron and Hur come up there, come alongside him, and hold up his arms so that Israel wins the battle. It takes a team to win a battle, and that's exactly what happened. So Hur was blessed because Hur's grandson, Bezaleel, was the guy who was given all kinds of gifts and abilities to lead in the building of the tabernacle of God. And Hur was mentioned in Exodus chapter 35 about, Bezaleel, my grandson. I bet he was proud of his grandson. That's my grandboy right there. He built the temple. He going to build the tabernacle. Woo! Way to go, B. He can build anything. And that's exactly what he could do. So here's the thing. When the Bible says he has the spirit of wisdom, he's literally talking about the skill to build. And there's not a person sitting in this room that doesn't need the skill to build the right kind of marriage, and to build the right kind of family, and to build the right kind of career, and to build a reputation that stands up for Jesus Christ and is going to stand for him. And so that's just a character trait that we need, the wisdom to be able to build the areas of our life instead of having them fall apart and die. He talks about the spirit of understanding. That word understanding was the same exact Hebrew word that described, it was the way that Nebuchadnezzar described Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He said, these guys have the understanding. These guys are literally better than all the other magicians. And so when he was saying that they had the spirit of understanding, he was saying they're better. They stand out. They're more reliable. They're more trustworthy. They're just better. And I don't know about you, but I want to be a better husband. I want to be a better father. I want to be a better pastor. I want to be a better believer. I want to have more boldness when it comes to standing up for Jesus Christ. I want to be better. And I've got to have the spirit of understanding, that character trait in my life. Because if I don't have it, things are going to fall apart. Things are going to start dying in my life. He talks about the spirit of counsel in Isaiah chapter 11. The spirit of counsel is when somebody has enough humility to actually take advice from either the book or from another godly person that says, hey, look, here's what you need to do. Here's how you need to act. These are the decisions that you need to make. And you don't just take counsel, but from that counsel, you actually formulate a plan. And you step back and you say, I have a plan for my life based on God's word. I have a plan for my wife and my marriage. I have a plan for my family and a plan for my ministry. I've got a plan for my life, living it out, every purpose for Jesus Christ. We've got to have a plan. We always say if you don't have a plan, you plan to fail. If you don't have a plan, you plan to fail. And that's absolutely true. We need that spirit of counsel. The next one is the spirit of might. You don't just need understanding and wisdom. At some point, you just need some strength. Literally, David's throne was referred to in a couple of ways. It was referred to as a throne of understanding and a throne of wisdom, but it was also referred to as a throne of strength. You know why? Because David had some strength. He had some might. And there's going to come a time in your life when you just got to have muscle. You got to have it. You got to have enough guts and enough strength to be able to say, yeah, things are really hard right now, but I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to throw in the towel. I'm not going to just cash in on my marriage. I'm not just going to turn my back on my kids. I'm not just going to walk away from my career and from my responsibilities. I'm not going to do it. I got enough guts and enough strength to stand in there and hang in there and allow God to breathe life into something in my life that's dying. The spirit of might, you're going to need it because you're going to be tempted to quit. And there's going to be a lot of temptation that comes your way. And you're going to need enough strength to say, hey, there's some awesome looking temptation. See ya. I'm going the other way. I'm going to keep my eyes on Christ and turn away from anything that can bring death and destruction in my life. He says, I have the spirit of knowledge. The knowledge, this is amazing. Knowledge that comes by observing and knowledge that comes by watching. Do you know how many times I've had people come up to me and say, I don't get it, Barry. She was there 1 minute and then she just left. I don't know why. I have no clue. She just walked out. And I always want to go, really? You really think she just walked out? You really think that nothing happened up to this point? She just left. And then people say, I don't get it. My kids are living for God and everything was going great and all of a sudden they just fell off the deep end just like that. I don't know what happened. I'm going to tell you this. Chances are there's a ton of warning signs going on all around us. We just don't see it. We're not opening up our eyes. We're not watching. We're not watching our marriage die. We think it's great. We're not watching our kids as they're literally just trying to survive, trying to make it. And we don't see the signs because we're too busy trying to look the part in front of everybody in town. And then all of a sudden that destruction comes and that death comes. Let paying attention to the warning signs be a part of who you are. Be a part of your character. Say, dear God, give me the spirit of knowledge so that I can see what's going on around me and not take everything for granted anymore. The last one he says is, I had the fear of the Lord. The fear of the Lord. A person that fears the Lord is in awe of Him and worships Him and reverences Him. That's the direct meaning there. And a lot of times in my prayer life, what I'll do is I'll start with the Lord's Prayer. I always start with the Lord's Prayer. I start with the Lord's Prayer because I love, it starts off by saying, hallowed be your name. Holy are you, God. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. You are my strength. You are my power. You are my wisdom. You are my rock. You are with me no matter what. When everybody else turns their back on me, you're there. And I am in awe of you. And I fear you. Jesus says, that's who I am. All of those things, that's the real me. And I wrote this paragraph, and to me it just encapsulates it all together. We need to be willing to say this: I have experience. I've accepted and had God raise up experience in my life, wisdom in my life that gives me the skill to build relationships, build a family, build a marriage, build a career, build a ministry, build a reputation. I don't know why I just thought of build a bear, but I'm not going to put that in there. I have understanding, a spirit of understanding. It separates me from the pack. It says I'm a better husband, a better wife, a better friend, parent, employee, minister. And in my humility and my willingness to learn, I listen to godly counsel. And I have a plan for my life and a plan for my family, a direction for all of us. I have that inner character trait of strength that causes me to decide, I will not quit when I'm tempted to quit. I will not quit. I have knowledge because I shut my mouth and I open up my eyes and I open up my ears and I start to listen and observe, and I know the condition of my life and my marriage and my family, and I have my finger on the pulse and I know what God's doing and I'm seeing the warning signs, and I have fear. Fear for the one who gives me all of these abilities and the character traits, so I submit to Him in every single way, shape, and form. And when Jesus says that He possesses the sevenfold Spirit, He says, this is who I am, this is my character. It has nothing to do with the outside. It has everything to do with the inside. Your character is the real you on the inside. You want to resurrect a part of your life that's dying? Allow God to form wisdom and understanding and counsel and might and knowledge and fear of Him in your heart and in your life. You need integrity. We all have to have it. And I was watching Rick Warren on a YouTube video. I've totally got to give him the credit for this because I could never come up with anything this good at all. Totally from Rick. So I'm watching him on this YouTube video, and he starts talking about integrity. And he says, you know, a lot of people think integrity is just, I'm going to be honest, I'm going to tell the truth, and I'm going to be and have integrity. I'm going to tell you this. Honesty is definitely part of integrity. But integrity comes from the word integer. And literally the word integer is defined as a unit of one. So in a sense, integrity is wholeness. Integrity is when you are one, when you are whole. And that basically means when somebody sees me, I am, whoever they see, what they see is what they get. Bottom line. I'm the same person at church that I am with my friends, that I am at work, that I am, in my home. I am absolutely the same person. There's wholeness there. A lot of times what we tend to do is we tend to compartmentalize our life. And we say, well, this is my professional life, and this is my home life, and this is my church life, and this is my family life, and this is my social life, and this is my secret life. I'm going to tell you, a lot of us have secret lives, and we think, it is not a big deal. I'm doing some stuff in secret. It's okay if I take on a little bit of water. It's okay if I have a little bit of this in my life, and we compartmentalize our life and we say things like that. I'm going to tell you this. The very moment you begin to compartmentalize your life, you lose your integrity. Because integrity is wholeness. Integrity is what you see is what you get. So you treat everybody the same. You're the same person at all these different places. There's this principle that Rick talks about called the Titanic myth. The Titanic myth basically says this: I can take on a little bit of water and still float. The problem with that is this: the Titanic was made with a compartmentalized hull. You guys maybe have heard this before. So they thought if one area of the ship is breached, it's not a big deal because just one compartment will fill up with water and the rest will float. The problem is that a hole in a boat is a hole in a boat is a hole in a boat. And if you have a hole in a boat, the boat ain't going to stay on top of the water. It's going to sink. And that's what they learned when it came to the Titanic. That whole compartmentalized theme wasn't a way for them to have a little bit of water and be okay, but really everything still went down, even though there was just a little bit of water. So what happens a lot of times is this. Or we may be in a rowboat. Let's say we're sitting in a rowboat, I'm at one end, you're at the other end, and I pull out a drill, and I start drilling a hole in it like this. And the other person looks at me and says, what are you doing, man? You're drilling a hole in the boat, we're going to go down. And I would say, hey, why don't you relax? I can do what I want to do. This is my end of the boat. I want to live my life my way, my end of the boat, my drill, get off my back. This doesn't affect you, right? And the other person is saying, oh, yeah, it affects me. Because as soon as you drill a hole in the boat, we're both going to go down. And I'm going to tell you something. That's true. That's true when it comes to sin. Because people say, no, I'll take on a little bit of water and everybody will be okay. No, sin may be private, but it's never personal. It always affects the people around you. It always does. Rick says this with such incredible, he's, in my opinion, the greatest communicator on the planet. But he basically said this. He said, when I miss one day in quiet time, I recognize it. He said, when I miss a week of quiet time, my wife recognizes it. He said, when I miss 2 weeks of quiet time, my church recognizes it. Why? Because eventually it always works its way out. And everybody that's connected in any way, shape, or form is going to go down with the ship. That's why you've got to step back and say, I choose to have integrity in my life. I choose to have a life, a unit of one, wholeness. I am the same. I'm living a life that is whole. Integrity is wholeness. And I'll tell you something. You have that in your life, and things are going to start coming back to life in your life. And you may think, well, okay, I'm going to walk out of here, and tonight I'm going to have wholeness in my life. You're going to wake up the next morning and go, my marriage still stinks. Barry's a liar. I'm going to tell you this. It takes a long time to bring things back from the dead. It takes a while to do that. It takes a long time to build character and fashion and shape character into a person's life. My son tore his ACL, actually destroyed his ACL, meniscus, and MCL. So he had to have a lot of surgery. And he had surgery back in back in July of this year. And so after all the surgery was done, he was getting ready to go into physical therapy. It was like a month later, whatever. He's like going, yeah, I feel kind of good. I'm getting around a little bit better and that kind of thing. And the doctor said, hold off. Let me explain what happened to you. I took part of your patella tendon out. As soon as I cut that out of your body, it died. When I fastened it to where the ACL is, it takes at least 6 months for that tendon to come back to life and give you the strength that you need on that ACL. Everybody scratches their head and say, why so long with the ACL? You're waiting for something to come back to life. That's why. And it takes a lot longer than a month. It takes a lot longer than 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. It takes 6 months on average for that stuff, whatever you want to call it, to come back to life in your knee and to give you the strength that you need. That's why you can't run for 6 months. And it's the same exact thing in your life. It's going to take a little bit of time, but you got to be faithful and you got to hang in there and you got to make right decisions. And God's going to start resurrecting areas in your life that are dying. He's just going to do it. Number 2, and that first point was a long one. So this one's going to be like really short. All right, here we go. Wait, you're like, 2? Great. We're halfway done. We're not halfway done. It's more than that. Wake up before it's too late. Wake up before it's too late. Revelation chapter 3, verses 2 and 3, the Bible says this, these first three words, now wake up! Exclamation point. Wake up. You got to wake up. Strengthen what little remains, for even what's left is at the point of death. Your deeds are far from right in the sight of God. Go back to what you heard and believed at first. Hold to it firmly and turn to me again. Unless you do, I will come upon you suddenly as an unexpected thief. If there was anybody that would realize what it's like to fall asleep and be overconfident and be overcome, it would have been Sardis. Because 2 times in their history, before Jesus gave this letter to John to give to the church at Sardis, they had been overrun. They had been defeated twice in their history. You say, how could Sardis be defeated? It was a city on a mountain surrounded by cliffs because they were overconfident and they fell asleep. That's why. And anybody that falls asleep is in a very dangerous position when it comes to their life. And Jesus says, you better wake up. How do you wake up? You ask yourself some simple questions. What am I doing in my life now that I've never done before? How have I drifted? How have I drifted away from very important things in my life, standards in my life, that I have drifted away from and I'm not doing anymore? Number 2, we need to regularly pay attention to Jesus. Keep our eyes upon Jesus. Hebrews 12, he's the author and finisher of our faith. Number 3, pay attention to the signs from your kids, your wife, your family, whatever it may be. Start to see the unseen. Start to see the spiritual things and the way that God is trying to get your attention in your life. Start to notice these things. Wake up and begin to watch and be alert. I'm going to tell you this. Life is the greatest thing in the world when you choose to live it for Christ. It really is. It's totally awesome. You're going to get to the end of your life, and I guarantee if you had another shot at it, if you had another chance to live your life again, you'd probably choose the same exact thing. I know I would. I would choose to live for Christ. But it doesn't mean it's always easy. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have some areas in your life that actually start to die. You know, we're not asking anybody to be perfect. We're just asking people to be whole. We're just asking you to have integrity. We're just asking you to allow God to develop these 7 characteristics in your life that literally will breathe life into areas that are dying in your life. Would you bow your heads and close your eyes for just a minute?